Imagine this. You're walking down a quiet beach, the salty air in your lungs and the soft sound of waves crashing nearby. Suddenly, a loud noise rips through the air, followed by a blinding flash. A giant whale has just exploded. Yes, exploded. And what's more shocking, the story isn't from some weird, fictional world. It actually happened in the United States, back in 1970. Today, we're diving deep into the incident that defied all logic, the exploding whale incident. It was November 12, 1970, when something utterly ridiculous and totally unexpected took place in Florence, Oregon. A 8-ton whale carcass had washed up on the beach, and it posed quite a problem for local officials. What do you do when a massive whale dies and just sits there on the shore, decaying and stinking up the place? Well, in most places, they would try to bury it or maybe remove it slowly. But in Oregon, they decided to do something drastic. They decided to blow it up. Yes, they chose dynamite as the solution. But as you might guess, things didn't exactly go according to plan. The Oregon Highway Division, led by highway engineer George Thornton, devised a plan to remove the whale. Their idea was to use 8 tons of dynamite, with the logic that the blast would break up the whale's carcass into smaller pieces, which would then be eaten by seagulls and other scavengers. Now, this might sound like the plot of a slapstick comedy, but in reality, it was taken seriously. The dynamite was placed near the whale's midsection, and the hope was that the explosion would send the carcass flying into the air, breaking it down and leaving no trace. The plan? Simple. The execution? Not so much. When the dynamite went off, the results were absolutely chaotic. The explosion was so massive that it sent whale chunks flying everywhere. Imagine this. Pieces of whale blubber and fat raining down from the sky, some of them smashing into nearby cars, buildings, and even a house a quarter of a mile away. You're probably thinking, how could something like this happen? Well, it wasn't the whale itself that exploded. It was the sheer force of the explosion sending massive chunks of whale flesh hurtling through the air. And it didn't just end with a few chunks here and there. No, some of them were big enough to crush a car. Imagine you're out for a nice drive and boom, a 70-pound chunk of whale lands on your roof. That's exactly what happened when a piece of whale hit the roof of a car, totally smashing it. In another part of the beach, a piece of the whale landed on the roof of a house, smashing through the shingles and leaving the homeowners with one of the most bizarre sights in history. But perhaps the most shocking thing, the seagulls didn't even get to feast on the remains as they were expected to. The explosion had shattered the whale into far too many pieces for the birds to pick up. Instead, the whale remained a smelly mess on the beach, and the highway department was left to figure out what went wrong. In hindsight, the Oregon Highway Division's plan was completely absurd. Dynamite isn't the usual solution for whale disposal, especially not when you were trying to break it up into smaller pieces. But the truth is, they didn't expect such chaos to unfold. They didn't anticipate that whale bits would rain down like some bizarre bombing raid on the beach. The aftermath was a disaster in every sense of the word. Local residents and tourists had to deal with the aftermath of smelly whale bits scattered all over the area, and the Highway Division had to spend days cleaning up the mess. But let's pause here for a moment and reflect. Why did they think this would work? Well, the idea was that the explosion would scatter the whale carcass, turning it into small pieces that nature could handle. But nobody anticipated that the force of the blast would send large chunks of whale raining down like a crazy, uncontrollable storm. The truth is, it was an experiment in desperation. The town needed to get rid of the whale, and they tried something unconventional. What they didn't expect was that sometimes nature doesn't play by the rules. In the end, what the world witnessed in 1970 was the strange, chaotic, and utterly bizarre explosion of a whale that left people in shock, laughing, and even wondering, could this ever happen again? To this day, the exploding whale incident stands as one of the strangest events in history, reminding us that sometimes even the best laid plans can have explosive consequences. And in a world where crazy things happen, you can bet that the story of the exploding whale will always remain a wild side of history. Thanks for joining us on today's adventure into the bizarre and the unexpected. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share if you want more stories that defy logic and expectations. Until next time, keep exploring the wild side of history.